Well, this morning I've titled this sermon, A Disciple of Jesus and Politics, right? And it's we don't talk about politics a lot, but the passage is beautiful, and it's a wonderful opportunity for us to kind of consider some of these things. And elections have just passed in some of the states, and people have mixed reactions, at least from Tamil Nadu, where my parents and my dad and Deepa's parents live. It's a very shocking kind of a situation right now, right? There's a lot of population, a lot of people who are extremely happy. There's another group, slightly older folk and like staunch supporters of certain parties, and they are not happy. And it's like the church is going through a big issue right now, even in Tamil Nadu, in Chennai, right? Think of this. This is the generation we are living in, right? See, one of the things about New City is we have people from different backgrounds, different tribes, different languages, different nationalities, different worldviews, and even different politics. And that's what makes this community very engaging, right? We bring our experiences and all of our gifts and our views into the body of Christ, and it really enhances our experience, right? I've had tremendous conversations with people who have all kinds of understanding of politics and the world and how things need to happen, and it's always fascinating, right? And so thank you, we love you guys, it's wonderful, right? But just to help us understand this generation, especially we call the Gen Z, right? And the Forbes magazine, this is what they talk about, right? They say Gen Z is passionate about equality and justice of every kind. They fight for themselves, they fight for their friends, they fight for their classmates, they fight for others. They see who are treated unfairly, whether due to issues of gender or sexuality or race or pay or environment, right? So we see this. It's a passionate generation that is passionate about justice and all of these wonderful things. That is fantastic, right? The study from Fast Company that does all these social research, it reveals that 76% of Gen Z is concerned about the human effect on planet and believe they can make a change. Wonderful. Thank you. Right? Because my generation never cared about these things. My parents' generation never cared about these things, right? So it is wonderful, right? These are good things. But it is true. What they're saying is true because the Gen Z today have a unique opportunity to create change across the world. And that's what happened in Chennai as well. That's what happened in Tamil Nadu, right? Which is good. But the question for us, as the church, the question for all of us, and especially people who wrestle with some of these things, the question I want to ask you is your politics, is your view of politics, is your view of social justice and the longings for social justice, is it shaped by the gospel or is it shaped by the world? Right? And that's the question we have to constantly ask ourselves. The question today we're going to consider is, what is your duty towards your government as disciples of Jesus? Especially with governments you don't agree with, right? How does the Bible shape our views? How does the Bible shape our responses? And I want to tell you, the gospel does not diminish social justice. It redeems and enhances it, right? The gospel does not make you less engaged in politics, but it keeps you from political idolatry, right? That's what the gospel does. The gospel does not make you have a lesser vision for the world, but it gives you a greater vision, including politics, a greater vision. Right? So this morning we're going to see how does this happen? What does God teach us about some of these things? And for that we're going to look at this encounter between Jesus and the Pharisees and the Herodians. And it seems like a very simple kind of an encounter. It seems like Jesus seems to say something. Sometimes we kind of misunderstand what he's saying. But so I'm going to walk you through what the passage means, and then I'm going to apply to you. Right? If you have your notes, you see that there are 5 points. I usually do 3 points, 5 points. So in case you're wondering, man alive, this is going to be 1 hour. It is not. Right? I've got my timer. We're going to go fast. All right? Don't worry about it. But I think this is a wonderful opportunity for us to let the gospel shape our views of the world. Okay? All right. What's happening in this passage? Why is this a trap? Why is this a trap? Right? In Mark chapter 12, the Pharisees and the Herodians come towards Jesus. Now, you need to understand that Pharisees and the Herodians are people from the opposite political spectrum. They hated each other. Right? They are bitter enemies. the Pharisees were Orthodox religious Jews, religious leaders, while the Herodians were worldly politicians, right? So they were completely opposite in how they view the world, and they are coming together. They are coming together to be able to trap Jesus. And they're asking a controversial question, right? They're asking the question, is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not? Now, you may be asking, what is controversial about that? It's a simple question, right? But you need to know, this was a heated, a very emotionally charged issue back then, right? So to help us understand, what is this tax? There were all kinds of taxes, but the tax they're talking about is the Roman head tax, okay? It's called the Roman head tax. And for the Roman head tax, every male has to pay a tax of a denarii, right? A denarii is a day's wage. You have to pay it once a year, one denarii, which is basically a day's wage. And people also think that it is not just for every male. The male will pay for their children and the family as well. So it is kind of a tax for the family. And the reason for this tax was to take a census of the population. Right? Every coin represented one person. So it's a census for the population. But also the coin goes into funding the troops, the Roman troops that was basically overseeing this region. Right? That was keeping the local population under oppression. Right? So that was the tax. Now, the problem was not with the amount of the tax. The denarii is not a lot of amount. Right? People are not upset about the amount. It is the symbol of the tax, what it meant. So a denarii was a coin especially minted by Caesar, and it had an image. It had an image on it, and it had an inscription on it. Okay? The image was the image of Tiberius Caesar, right? And the inscription around the image read, this is what it says, Tiberius Caesar, son of divine Augustus, high priest. They made this coin especially for the Jewish population to tell them, bro, Caesar is God here, right? Caesar is God, and he's the high priest. It was an insult to the population. It was an insult. Right? It was a blasphemy because Caesar is claiming himself to be not only divine, but also the ruler is claiming to be a high priest, some kind of mediator between God and man. Right? And so people hated this. The symbol, what it symbolizes, right? They hated, they were repulsed by it, they were enraged and outraged by it, and people revolted, right? This happened around 680, that's when the tax was instituted, and the first revolt was led by Judas of Galilee, all right? Judas of Galilee, right? He did three things, and I want you to keep track of it. He did three things, very interesting. First, what he did, right? When he was talking about opposing people and he was trying to get a group together to oppose the Romans who were instituting this tax, the first thing he did is he went and cleansed the temple. Judas of Galilee. He went and cleansed the temple. The second thing he did was he was preaching about the kingdom of God and that God is king and that Caesar is not king. And the third thing he did was he led an armed revolt against the Romans. Okay, he did those three things, and when he led the armed revolt, the Romans attacked him, they defeated him, and they killed him. So the movement was suppressed, the revolt failed. This just happened. People are not happy. People are not happy, right? With this tax, people are not happy. They are really upset and enraged against the Romans. And so here is Jesus coming along, right? Jesus is coming. He is preaching about the kingdom of God. You with me? In chapter 11, he had cleansed the temple. He had thrown out the money changers. We're in chapter 12. Just in chapter 11, he has cleansed the temple. Only one thing is left. What is that? Armed revolt. Okay? So the people are coming. And they are waiting for Jesus to take up arms and go against the Romans, right? They know maybe this is the king we've been waiting for, right? And so the Herodians and the Pharisees take this as an opportunity. They hate Jesus. They want to trap Jesus. They want to kill Jesus. But they're not able to do that openly because the people love Jesus. Jesus is very popular with the people, right? And so they can't just go against him, right? And so because they will lose their popularity among the people. So they are trying to trap him. And so for this, both groups come together. Based on this charged issue, based on the issue of the head tax, the Herodians and the Pharisees, they come together and they are setting a trap. And the word is a very heavy word, right? The word is to kind of just to, like an animal, they're going to trap the animal to kill it, right? And so that's the way they are coming. Look at verse 13. Verse 13, and they said to him, some of the Pharisees and some of the Herodians, to trap him in his talk. And they came and said to him, Teacher, we know that you are true and do not care about anyone's opinion, right? Flattery, right? For you are not swayed by appearances, but truly teach the way of God. And now they ask the question, is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not? Should we pay them or should we not? And Jesus is asking, how do you know what tax he's talking? Because he's asking for a denarii, right? They're talking about the head tax, right? Now, here is the trap. If Jesus says yes, pay the taxes, the people are going to get upset. People will be enraged, right? He's going to get in trouble with the people. If Jesus says no, don't pay the taxes, the Romans are going to get upset, right? Immediately the Pharisees and the Herodians will go to the Romans, they tell the Romans, here is a man who is trying to start an insurrection, right? A rebellion, right? You got to arrest him. So the Romans will come after him. So both ways Jesus is going to lose. If he says yes, pay the tax, he's going to lose. If he says no, don't pay the tax, he's going to lose. So if you think about it, it's a remarkable question. Man, I don't know how long they thought about that, right? It's a remarkable, clever question. But Jesus' answer was marvelous. What's happening? They marveled. Look at verse 15, right? Verse 15. They almost think they've trapped him. Everybody's looking. Everybody's watching. They feel like they've trapped him. Look at verse 15. But knowing their hypocrisy, he said to them, why put me to the test? Bring me a denarii and let me look at it. And they brought one, and he said to them, whose likeness and inscription is this? They said to him, Caesar's. Jesus said to them, well, render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. And they marveled at him. They don't know what to do. What is this answer? What is Jesus talking about? They marveled. They marveled at him. In a short answer, Jesus is telling us how we are to relate to government and politics, right? This is a fantastic answer where Jesus is slowly, it seems like a simple answer, but by just telling us, give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, give to God what belongs to God, Jesus is helping us to understand how, as his disciples, we relate to governments and authorities and rulers and politics. He's saying, whose likeness? He's taking the coin, he's saying, whose image is this? Whose image is this, right? And they say, Caesar's. Well, then it belongs to Caesar. Give it to him. Well, you don't need to keep it. Give it to him. It belongs to him. Give it to him. Give to God what belongs to God. Meaning, whose image are you? God has made us in his image. And so indirectly Jesus is saying, no, you belong to God. Give the coin to Caesar, but you belong to God. You are made in his image, right? And so it is just marvelous. So with this background, what does that mean? Of course, we marvel at this, but what does that mean? How does it apply? I'm going to now help you apply, right? And apply to how, as disciples, we look at the government, we look at politics, we look at some of these things in the world. How do we do that? What do we learn? First thing, right? First thing, God is sovereign over all. We have to recognize that God is sovereign over all, right? Verse 17, Jesus says, render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's and to God the things that are God's. Jesus says, no, God is above all. God is sovereign over everything. Rulers will demand your money, but not your allegiance. God has your total allegiance. Rulers will demand your vote, but not your worship. God has your worship. Right? Psalm 100 and verse 3 says, know that the Lord, he is God. It is he who made us. We are his people, the sheep of his pasture. Right? So what does that mean? How does that apply? God is sovereign over everything. It is good and right to give Caesar what belongs to Caesar. No, don't fight it. It is good and right to give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, but it is wrong and sinful to give to Caesar what belongs to God. Right? God is sovereign. God is sovereign. Secondly, if God is sovereign over all, governments are ordained by God. Okay? A sovereign God ordains human government. Okay? How do we know this? Romans 13 verse 1, right? We're going to look at Romans a little bit, but it explains what Jesus is talking about a little in detail. Romans chapter 13 verse 1, it says, let every person be subject to the governing authorities. For there is no authority except from God. And those that exist have been instituted by God. Okay, here is a sovereign God who institutes authorities, civil authorities, local authorities, justice, all of these things. Civil authorities are instituted by God right from the beginning, right from Genesis. Right, in the Bible, in Genesis 1:28, when God says, be fruitful and multiply, and he says, fill and subdue it, it is a form of governing and managing the garden. Right? It is instituted by God right from the beginning. God calls people to come and manage and to govern resources and people and institutions and all of these things. God ordains it, God sets it up, God gives the authority, and they represent, all of these authorities represent his authority. They don't have any authority apart from him. They represent his authority, and he gives them a particular purpose, especially governments. He gives them a particular purpose. The purpose is to maintain order and peace, to punish the wrong and to provide justice, to do welfare for people. A society will crumble into chaos without any governance. Right? Without any governance. Even the worst government is better than no government. Right? We see in the book of Judges, everybody did what they did when there was no king. Right? So a sovereign God ordains human government. Right? God ordains human government. God gives it a purpose. There is a reason. Right? And Romans 13 verse 2, this is what it says. Therefore, whoever resists the authorities, resists what God has appointed. For he is the servant of God. Verse 4, he is the servant of God. He's talking about government. The government is the servant of God. Right? No problem. I think it's the audio Bible, I think. Right? Good. You're listening to the Bible. Think of this. I want to understand, and I know we have some questions. We're like, Ranjit, but what about this government? What about that government? Right? I want you to think of this. Jesus is talking about a Roman coin. He's talking about the Roman government. He's talking about the Roman government, the very government that is going to crucify him soon. Right? No, God has ordained. We don't know. It is the mysterious purpose of God. We don't know his wisdom. We don't know why he allows what he allows. But no, it is not that God has ordained only good governments and certain governments. No. God is over all, and God ordains all things, and even human government. Jesus is telling to Pilate, right, the Roman governor. Jesus is telling to the Roman governor in John 19, you have no authority over me at all unless it had been given to you from above. No authority. Right? So we don't know why. We don't know the mysterious reasons of God. God is all wise and he's all good. And he's all powerful. And we don't know why he does what he does with our human minds and imaginations. We are not able to comprehend all his purposes. And yet, God gives the authority to governments. Right? That includes the Roman government that was oppressive and abusive and authoritarian and autocratic. All right, third. Okay? God is sovereign over all. Governments are ordained by God. Thirdly, disciples have a duty toward the government. Okay, as disciples of Jesus, we have a duty toward our governments, right? Romans 13, verse 5. Therefore, one must be in subjection, not only to avoid God's wrath, but also for the sake of conscience. Right? He's talking about government there, right? The same chapter. Not only to avoid God's wrath, but also for the sake of our conscience. For because of this, you also pay taxes. For the authorities are ministers of God. Okay, if you're working in the government, I want you to be encouraged, right? Sometimes growing up in my tradition, people are not, they look down on certain professions. right? Oh, no, if you're in certain professions in the world, there's too much corruption. You can't be a witness, so you got to avoid all this. If you're a believer, or you've got to avoid businesses. If you're running a business in India, you cannot be a believer, right? So avoid going into business, right? Avoid going into government. The government is too corrupt, so you have to avoid all these things. So growing up as believers, we are kind of thinking stuff like this. Why? Because we want to be a wonderful disciple of Jesus, so we want to try and keep ourselves from some of these things. No. The authorities, people who work in government, are ministers of God. You are doing God's work, and so thank you. Right? Attending to this very thing. Verse 7, it says, pay to all what is owed to them. Taxes to whom taxes are owed. Revenue to whom revenue is owed. Respect to whom respect is owed. Honor to whom honor is owed. But Ranjit, I mean, the leaders don't have any respect. The leaders don't deserve honor. No. Your respect and your honor is not based upon how the leaders perform and function. No, they are representing God. God has placed them over there, and they have an authority from God to do the functions. And even if they don't do it well, and even if they don't deserve your respect, we are called to respect them. Why? Because God is above them. Right? Because they're talking about the Romans here. They're talking about the Romans. 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 1, right? Another section where we hear about our duty, right? As a disciple, our duty towards governments and politics and all of these things. 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 1, I'm going to read it for you. It says, first of all, then I urge that supplications and prayers and intercessions and thanksgivings be made for all people, for kings, and for all who are in high positions, that we may lead a peaceful and quiet life, godly and dignified in every way. This is good, and it is pleasing to the sight of God, our Savior. This is good. So when Jesus says, give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, Jesus is saying, no, paying tax is right, paying tax is good. As a disciple, we are to exercise that duty, right? It is our duty. Even to a pagan, oppressive state, which is eventually going to crucify Jesus. Jesus is talking about pay the denarius to the Roman Caesar. Pay it, even though the Romans are going to crucify him. His hands are going to be driven through, the nails are going to be driven through his hands and feet. Later, the Romans will going to persecute the apostles, and they're going to crucify them, and they're going to kill the apostles and persecute the church. So it doesn't matter, my friends, it doesn't matter how the government functions or who the government is, whether you agree politically or not. No, as a disciple of Jesus, God expects us to have a certain duty to our government. What is the duty? Whether we disagree or not, what is the duty? To be good citizens, to pay taxes, not only to pay your taxes and obey the laws, but to also respect and honor authorities. Right? Do your civic duties, pray for your leaders. We wonder why things are going this way in India, why leaders are... Maybe because we are not praying for our leaders. We are not praying enough for our leaders. So God is sovereign, God ordains human government, disciples have a duty. Fourthly, avoid political complacency and idolatry. Right? Avoid political complacency and idolatry. What do I mean by this? Complacency. Avoid political complacency, especially in the church, right? Avoid being withdrawn, indifferent, cynical, and ignorant about the government and about your leaders. Right? And oftentimes, and it's true, and generally if you are, this is a very common thing in the church, right? We are kind of raised like this. No, government is corrupt. There's no hope for the government. Don't get into the government. No, don't get into politics. Just stay away, right? Just stay away. It's a gone case, right? So we are raised withdrawn. We are raised indifferent. We are raised cynical. Nothing is going to change. No, being a disciple, you have an ultimate allegiance and responsibility to God, and God is the one who's saying us, no, you have a duty. Don't be complacent. You have a greater responsibility to God, to His Word. And part of that responsibility, right, is not to be complacent, but sometimes you may have to resist. When the government is doing something immoral and illegal, when the government is calling you to do something that is against Scripture, no, don't just be complacent and keep going along the way. No, you should be able to stand before God and resist peacefully. right? Sometimes you have to keep the leaders accountable respectfully. That is part of obeying God. Right? So avoid political complacency. Authority and power is good, but in the world, authority and power can be abused. So don't be naive when it comes to your leaders or other leader, whoever it is. No, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. This is what Acts 5, they say, no, when the authorities ask you to do something that is against the will of God, no, this is what they say in Acts 5. No, we would rather please God and not man. So my friends, the call for some of us today is not to be politically complacent, not to just go with the crowd, not to just go with the flow. But on the other hand, we should avoid political idolatry. Right? Political idolatry. See, back then, the rulers and the authorities, the Romans and the Egyptians and all of them, they somehow claimed divine authority. Meaning, they felt like they were chosen by God and they represented God. And all of that is true in some sense, right? But no, they claimed that divine authority and therefore, they claimed absolute authority. They claimed absolute allegiance. Right? Because they felt, no, God has placed us here, so you better obey, do everything that we say. You have to totally submit to us. You cannot ask us any questions. And that is how things worked back then. But Jesus is saying, no, be very careful. No, your allegiance belongs to God. Your worship belongs to God, not to any political party or not to any political leader. Right? Jesus says, submit to your leaders, but don't worship them. Resist political idolatry. Okay? And as disciples of Jesus, because we have full and total allegiance to Christ and God, no, we should be open. We should be open to different political views. We should be open to different political choices without deifying one and demonizing the other. No, we should give the space for that because God gives space for that. Right? So I want to speak especially to this generation, right? Who love justice and who love all of these things and who are completely engaged. I want you to guard your heart against idolatry. Idolatry. Right? Let me ask you a few questions just to kind of see, right? Ranjit, what does that mean? How do I know I have a political idolatry? How do I know? How do I know? This is becoming an ultimate thing for me. This is something that is becoming an ultimate value for me. I'm putting all my hope and meaning into the politics of the world and the leaders of the world. How do I know? Here are some questions to help us understand, right? First, think about this. Think about this. Do you get angry or anxious when you talk about politics? When you think of my kind of people, right? When you think of my kind of people, are these the people with the same kind of politics? Right? Is that what it is? When you hear people's political views, do you feel morally superior? Or do you look down on the other's views? Look down on people? When you share your political views, can people also see the fruit of the Spirit in you? Does the news from the world impact your emotional stability? Can you genuinely love people who differ politically from you? Right? Can you? We are like, no, we love Jesus. Jesus says, love your enemies. I'm happy to love my enemies. But not the one who differs politically from us, right? Last question. Do you secretly or even openly rejoice when people who oppose, who are the opposing political side, when they suffer, right? Do you rejoice? Do you secretly or openly rejoice when people opposite to your political views suffer? Is that us? And these questions are not just for you, these questions are for me, right? I'm raising 3 children, and they're constantly looking at me. They're constantly watching me. They know, and I know. I know, right? And I'm quite interested in, I love all these kinds of things. I love debate, I love talking about, I love the issues, I love all these things, right? And so, I know. Ranjit, but do you have political... No, in my eyes, I'm very neutral. You with me? I'm a pastor. In fact, you may agree. If you come and talk to me about Paul, you'll know, right? I'll be like, oh, no, it's okay. We are everywhere, right? I'm everywhere, right? It's okay, right? But my kids tell me, no, Daddy, no. You are not neutral. You are not neutral, right? In fact, my daughter gave me a gift for, like a funny, kind of sarcastic gift for my birthday, right? Which I want to release. I want to reveal what it is. But it tells me, no, you are like this. This is you, right? It's an important thing for me to understand, Lord. No, I'm not neutral. I'm not neutral. I want to love you above everything. I don't want to love any political party or any political leader or any political view or any ideology. No, my heart, I want to give my heart to Jesus, not to the world. Right? And so, please, I want to urge you, don't sit here thinking, no, I don't have political idolatry. No, we all have political idolatry in this generation. Our ultimate identity and allegiance is to God. It is not to any caste. It is not to any tribe. It is not to any nation. It is not to any political ideology. Right? If you're trying to fit Jesus into any of these worldviews, you've lost the gospel. You have lost the gospel. If you're trying to fit Jesus into your politics, you have lost the gospel and the witness in the world. And that's what's happening right now. Right? No earthly kingdom, no earthly government, no earthly nation is to be identified with God's kingdom. And we have to be careful because in today's culture, the idolatry is on all sides. Whatever sides there are, whatever parties, whatever ideologies, there is idolatry on all sides. We support one and we demonize the other. We promote one and we hate the other. We mourn for violence on the one hand, whereas we rejoice violence on the other side. We fight for justice on the one side, but we are happy with injustice on the other side. Well, it is completely divided. Political idolatry has taken over the culture. So my friends, I want you to understand, if you are centered on the gospel, and that's what we talk about here, we want to be centered. We want to be centered on the gospel. If you are centered on the gospel, you will find yourself politically homeless. If you are very comfortable with any political party or anything in the world, no, there's a little idolatry there. No. If you truly follow the ways of Jesus, the left is going to hate you because they think you're too conservative. The right is going to hate you because they will think you're too liberal, right? That is the gospel way. That is the Jesus way. Some will hate you because of your biblical views on gender and sexuality, and some will hate you because of your views about the environment and about creation. Right? You will be fighting for the unborn and the elderly, as well as the immigrant and the refugee. This is the gospel, right? You are not going to be loved by anybody else. And if you are loved by anyone in this world, then you need to question yourself and see, is this some kind of idolatry? Am I following the gospel or am I pleasing the world? No, Jesus was hated by both the Pharisees and the Herodians. Right? So do not be surprised if people hate you from all sides. You are actually probably at home with Jesus. All right, avoid political complacency and idolatry. Lastly, Jesus is our eternal hope and judge. Jesus is our eternal hope and judge. Jesus, my friend, Jesus is completely opposite to the views of the world. Is completely opposite to the systems and the authorities of the world, the kings and the kingdoms of the world. So if you're looking, my dear friends in this generation, if you're looking for hope, for the world, it is not in the politics of the world. It is in Jesus. Jesus is the hope for the world. Think of this. Caesar had all the coins, but Jesus did not have a single coin. When they ask him for a coin, he's asking, can somebody give me a coin? Caesar had all the coins in the world. Jesus had no coin. He had no place to lay his head. Caesar had his inscription, an image on his coin. When Jesus was on the cross, when he was going to the cross, his image was marred and disfigured. People could not even recognize him, and they turned their faces away from him. The Caesars of the world are trying to gain more power and more control and more comfort and more fame. And Jesus lived all his life giving away his power. I know you want hope for the world. I know you want hope for the next generation. It is not found in the politics of the world. It is found in Jesus. It is found in the gospel. Right? Jesus lived by giving his power away. He washed the feet of the ones who betrayed him. He forgave his enemies from the cross. The world says, blessed are you when you have more power. Blessed are you when you have more success. Blessed are you when you are more famous. Blessed are you when you have more control. Blessed are you when you have more influence. But Jesus says, no, blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are those who are meek. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Blessed are the peacemakers. Blessed are those who are pure in heart. It is completely opposite to the world. The Judas of Galilee was trying to bring hope to the people through a revolution, through a retaliation, and through a revolt. But Jesus of Galilee brought hope through the ultimate revolution. Through the ultimate revolution, not through any retaliation, not through any revolt, but by giving his life, my friends. He created the ultimate revolution by defeating, not Caesar, by defeating sin and death and freeing you eternally. He is the hope for the world. He is the hope for the world. He delivers us by becoming our substitute. No, the kings and the queens and the leaders of the world will make you their substitute. But Jesus says, no, I will be your substitute on the cross. And he pays for our sin, not by taking a sword, but by the power of the Spirit, the word of God, the gospel. My friend, Jesus is the hope for the world, not politics. Wherever the gospel advances, wherever Jesus advances, not the politics of the world, not the politics of the world, not the ideologies of the world. Wherever the king advances, wherever the gospel advances, there is freedom. There is healing. There is unity. There is celebration. There is joy. There is peace. This is the power of the gospel. And this is why as the church, no, we are not called to identify with any politics of the world. Of course, be engaged, be responsible. No, but we are called to advance the gospel in the world. Right? Jesus is the hope. I know you want poverty to end. I know you want wars to end. I know you want injustice to end. I know you want the world to be made right. Jesus is the hope for the world. Jesus is the hope. But not only the hope for the world, my friends, Jesus is the ultimate judge. And I want you to understand, again, this generation, I want you to lean into this. Jesus is the ultimate judge of the world. I know you have a longing for justice. You have a longing for justice. But my friends, if you're not careful, your longing for justice will move towards vengeance. It will move towards vengeance. No, but this is why as disciples, no, we know we want to keep the leaders accountable. We are like, who will keep the governments accountable? Who will keep the institutions accountable? No, my friends, you come and you pray to the judge of all the world. He is just, Jesus is king, and he is going to come and judge one day. He will return as a judge, and trust in his wise and righteous and swift and just judgment. You can trust in him. Because if not, if you don't put your trust in the righteous judge, then you will be a person of vengeance. And this is why this generation that wants justice but constantly cancels people. Why? Why? Because that is the only thing they can do. Cancel somebody. No, but as disciples, we don't want to cancel anybody. We want to let the judge of the world deliver his judgment. Right? Jeremiah 5 verse 28. This is what it says. I'm reading it for you. It says, they have grown fat. He's talking with the leaders and the politicians and the governments and the kings of the world. They have grown fat and sleek. They have no bounds in deeds of evil. They judge not with justice and the cause of the fatherless to make it prosper. And they do not defend the rights of the needy. Shall I not punish them for these things? Declares the Lord. Shall I not avenge myself on a nation such as this? My friend, leave the judgment to God so you can rest in this world. You don't need to be anxious. You don't need to seek vengeance. Jesus is the ultimate judge. But I also want you to understand, no, he is not the ultimate judge just for the leaders and the politicians. He's also your ultimate judge. He's also going to keep us accountable. He's also going to judge us based on how we respond to his word. How we submit to his word and how we respect what he says to us today. So, my friends, hopefully today, and it's an interesting kind of a passage, and hopefully today you get a greater vision. You get a greater vision. Maybe for some of us, you are validated in some things. But even maybe there are things that we are convicted of today. So we come and we constantly ask Jesus, I want the gospel to shape my views in the world. I don't want to be shaped by social media. I don't want to be shaped by politicians. I don't want to be shaped by the ideologies of the world. I want the gospel to shape me. Would you give me wisdom, Lord? How can you not be anxious and have peace in a world of political division? How can you have the power to love even those who may completely disagree and differ from you politically? How can you show honor even to leaders who do not deserve any respect and honor? It is possible only when Jesus is your ultimate identity and not politics, not your views. When Jesus becomes your ultimate identity, my friend, you mourn with those who mourn. Not just people who like you or people you support. No, you mourn with those who mourn. You rejoice with those who rejoice. The gospel shapes your heart, it shapes your mind, it shapes your responses. In a world that is divided, no, the people of God, because of the gospel, are people of compassion and kindness, people of respect, people who honor, people who submit, people who are generous, people who forgive. Not just people who act and think like you, but especially those who don't. This is the hope of the gospel. Let's pray.